Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Heel Team 6 Wrestling is proud to present the Bodega Wrestling Podcast. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, what is happening? Welcome once again to the Impact Bodega podcast. Once again, I am your host for the evening, Robert Does Wrestling on YouTube.com. On this time around, I got two people joining me on this podcast. We got Larkin. What's going on, Larkin?
I'm doing well, Robert. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. And also, I got Courtney. How are you doing? I don't hear her.
Hold on. Courtney,
I'm
say
doing
what's
great.
Yeah.
So, first things first, before we start, I will highly like to encourage you to do the right thing and follow this podcast, obviously, on iTunes, Stitcher, and on the main hub that is youtube.com. Also, we have a Twitter page at Wrestling Bodega Podcast. We are gonna be talking about a couple of topics, but before I start, I want to ask you, Larkin, how will, from 1 to 10, how would you rate this week in professional wrestling as a fan?
Oh, my God. Well, as far as news goes, it's like up there like 9 or 10 because there's so much news that went out there. I mean, it's exciting times. There's a lot to talk about with pro wrestling, with the, resurgence of AEW and what they got going forward in the future, what people want to do as far as, what company they want to work for. I got to give it like a solid 9.5, Robert.
And about you, Kearney, if you were to write just a single sentence describing this week in professional wrestling, what would you write on that piece of paper?
This week has been one of the most cuckoo bananas weeks in wrestling I have ever been a part of.
There's a lot of wild stuff going on. Let's start with the big shark, Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho have officially joined AEW. He signed a contract with them for 3 years. There have been rumors and speculations that he and his contract might not be exclusive, but at this point in time, none of that have been confirmed. We also heard that there have been a couple of, bidding races. It is like old school, eBay. There were people bidding and doing the bidding for Chris Jericho to get him. What are your thoughts on that, Mr. Larkin?
I got to say it's very interesting because, Impact Wrestling, he did talk about, possibly there was a meeting with him to go there. I mean, he talked about possibly wrestling the likes of a man he's wrestled before in Johnny Impact, Brian Cage, Rich Swann, Sami Callihan. I mean, there was talk about it, but I guess Tony Khan came up with a better number for Jericho, a bigger number, and he decided to go to AEW. I mean, he got taken out of WWE's, open, and he's on the alumni page. So, I mean, Chris Jericho, ever since he went to New Japan and just did this thing with Omega and Naito, what have you, I mean, Chris Jericho's just all over the place. And it's exciting to see him, with Cody and the Young Bucks, who he's also friends with. So, I'm excited to see the Ayatollah of rock and roll just continue to keep shining and striving.
How about you, Miss Carney?
I think that this whole situation has created a bidding war, and it's created a more cutthroat era. Switchblade, pun intended. That we're going to see a lot of bidding wars going on between different companies for talent. And that to me is a great thing because that means talent's going to get paid more. They're going to get better treatment behind the scenes. Maybe as far as maybe this will pressure, different companies to start providing some level of health care for their performers. Just seeing the wildness of just everybody wants everybody at this point, and it's just a grab up. It's like who can we grab from here, there, and everywhere else? And just seeing Jericho there, like I watched the press conference live, and when Jericho walked out, I legit like screamed because I was like, are you fucking serious? We have Chris Jericho in AEW. We've got the GOAT, the Ayatollah of rock and roll, Y2J. We've got him signed up for AEW, committed to it, and wanting to make this thing a success. Now, in my opinion, that's going to spark maybe other people who are in a similar, position as Chris that are considered maybe GOATs and things like that they're going to come and they're going to want to be a part of AEW. It's going to encourage more high-profile people to go. And just Chris Jericho being involved in this project with the Bucks and Cody is just amazing.
One of the things that I have, noticed, one of the patterns in professional wrestling, and when it comes down to company, there is a reason why I don't work for wrestling companies, just in case you're wondering, is that there is ambience. The place is very paranoid, right? And when there is a new kid in town and that kid that is coming in have the new shiny stars and he have a couple of bucks on his pocket, everybody in the scene gets crazy. They get paranoid as hell, and obviously they will try to get as many people as possible, and that is a great thing for the wrestlers in general. I'm not necessarily big on having too many indie style professional wrestling. Why? Because it feels like it is just a continuation of a one big company. However, this is a good thing in my view, due to the workers, due to the wrestlers getting better deals, most likely better deals for days off, better deals for their merchandise and that type of stuff. So obviously I support that, and obviously I found it interesting that Chris Jericho was the one who sold Don Callis and Mr. Scott D'Amore to Ed Norton. He was the one who did the sales pitch. However, at the end of the day, when it comes down to him performing for them, he rather did the big money deal. And I get it, because Chris Jericho is not a spring chicken. But that I wonder, and this is just pure speculation, how did Don Callis felt when he heard about Chris Jericho, joining All Elite Wrestling? Do you have anything else on that topic?
I'll go first. I'm just going to say this. I mean, Don Callis is also friends with the Young Bucks and all those guys, with the New Japan Pro Wrestling tie-in. I think he respects his friend's decision. I mean, him and Callis will always be friends. They've known each other for over 20 plus years. So I think as someone who knows Chris Jericho, I think he understood, why he did what he did. That's all really I can say about that.
How about you, Miss? Yeah, go ahead.
I think that Callis did understand, because at the end of the day, Callis understands that it's about dollars and cents. It's about how much money, that someone can bring into their household and provide for. Chris Jericho has either 3 or 4 kids. I can't remember the exact number of kids he has. But, he has children that have to go to college that he wants to put through and have the best education. He in order to do that, who are you going to go with? Are you going to go with Anthem and Impact, who are kind of regressing? Or are you going to go for something that's burgeoning and has a big movement behind it? I'm sure that Don Callis understands it, and I'm sure he was a little disappointed that Jericho just didn't go ahead and just do it just because he's his friend. But I'm sure he understands, because this is a business. This, and a lot of times when you mix business and personal, you have to kind of separate yourself personally from it and see the pure professional side of it. And I'm sure Don Callis saw that. And I'm sure Don Callis and the Bucks and Cody and all those guys are cool, because, Callis is close with them. He's close with a lot of the New Japan talent. So I'm sure that Don Callis was more than okay with it and understood.
Next in line, I got Rach, the biggest drawing star in Mexico at this moment in time. Obviously the second person in line being LA Park, and the third person being Sin Caras, aka Caristico. The number one big draw in Mexico, signed as his primary home with Ring of Honor. Obviously, he's gonna be still doing dates with CMLL, but his primary run is gonna be with Ring of Honor. However, he was booked to do a couple of MLW events, and he got pulled out of those events. What are your thoughts on this? Larkin, go first.
I gotta say, I mean, it's really interesting. When I first heard about the story, I'm like, all right, he's with Ring of Honor, and then MLW pulled him. It's going to be interesting to see, where it goes. I'm a fan of the guy. I think he's an amazing talent. I think he fits with Ring of Honor. There's a lot of great stars there, like Bandito's just with them now, Juice Robinson and his group, Mark Haskins. I mean, there's so many great talents in Ring of Honor in the history that's been with Ring of Honor since 2002. So quite frankly, as a fan, I'm kind of curious and interested to see what happens going forward with him and the overall MLW Ring of Honor situation.
How about you, Miss?
Rush, I love him. Like, I'm a big LIJ fan, and so anything that's LIJ by extension, I'm going to love. So, I love him, and, I did see him in MLW and all that stuff. And, I think, it's kind of sad that he can't make this last show, but I understand that it's a business and that, when they're in direct competition with, Ring of Honor now, because, whether we see it or not, like Impact, ROH, and MLW are all fighting for the same viewer, basically, at this point. So it's going to be more cutthroat. It's going to be more, it's going to be more straight business, and it's not going to be anything personal. And, with him and ROH, I'm so excited. Like, him and Bandito are in the same freaking company. Him versus Bandito, give me that right now. Mm-hmm. Like, I want to see that match, because that match will be insane. Because, you think of the two luchador styles in that ring together, like, we're going to get like some magic like we got on SmackDown with Rey and Andrade. So, there's plenty of possibilities. And then with, like Mike said, with the new, with Juice's new stable, with Tennille Dashwood, formerly Emma, with Mark Haskins and David Finlay, it's going to be amazing. And just this new crop of talent that Ring of Honor has is just, it's so good. Like, I've watched Mark Haskins personally since about 2014, back when he was on the UK independent scene. And dude is phenomenally talented. And I'm just like, I just can't wait. Like, I'm over here, like, doing my evil Tama tapping fingers, just waiting for all the other Americans to find out about him and to see how great he is, and for him to explode, because he is a worthy talent. So are Juice and Finlay. I love them in New Japan. David and his C Block trophy from the G1. Like, they're a good mix. And Emma, or Tennille, excuse me, I still call her Emma. I can't get that out of my head. Like, she is phenomenally talented, and she will fit in great with them, I think. And just this whole situation is just great. It's just like we're seeing like a burgeoning scene that's outside of WWE, and everybody's wanting everybody, and it's just so great.
The thing that actually, caught me off guard is him, Raj, changing his home. Instead of being CMLL, his main home, now his home is gonna be Ring of Honor. That totally lets you know how CMLL might be conducting their business down there in Mexico. That's why you see a lot of talent jumping ship from one company to the other, to the indies and blah blah blah, because they're the people who are down there with power, they might be mistreating when it comes down financially some of their main draws. Therefore, they're missing people out, and this is gonna be a big blow to CMLL. From the first couple of months, you're not gonna be noticing any changes, but people were paying to see this dude in particular, unless they are able to find someone else to replace him. Let's say another run of Mysterio in CMLL. I think that might be the first time, actually. However, if that is their vision, they're gonna be losing a couple of people and big bucks, and they have big stadium. It is not like, let's say, in the US when they wrestle in a 10-15K arena every Monday, when in Mexico it's like they got like a 10K arena, but on the big shows, on the like pay-per-views, like 25K and above. So it is gonna be a little bit harder to fill that arena without Mr. Roach. Let's jump back to World Wrestling Entertainment for a second. And this is a rumor, so all of this might end up being bullshit. It might end up being fake news, but we're gonna be talking about regardless. There have been a lot of speculation this week about WWE talent reportedly requesting for their release. We got on that list, we got Mike Bennett and Maria Kanellis. We got the Revival, and also on that rumored list is none other than Dolph Ziggler. What are your thoughts on this, Larkin?
Well, I got to tell you something. It's really telling, like we were talking about in the chat, when Dolph Ziggler is changing his Twitter handle back to Nick Nemeth, his real name. I'll be honest with you. If he goes to AEW, I think he's a great fit. If he goes to New Japan or Ring of Honor, that dude is just, Kent State University. Dude's a hell of a talent. He's an asset wherever he goes. As far as the Revival, hell of a tag team. They kind of have that throwback to the Brainbusters, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, or Arn and Ole Anderson. So if I could see them going to AEW, absolutely. I mean, the FTR, the Revival, they have history with Cody and the Bucks. If they even went to Impact Wrestling, I could see them against Pentagon and Phoenix, as well as LAX, playing on the whole, no flips, just fists, because they're, ground and pound kind of tag team. They don't really fly. They kind of, take it and ground was wise for as a tag team. They have so much promise. I definitely could see them going to either more AEW, same with the likes of Dolph Ziggler. As far as Mike and Maria Kanellis go, he was on 205 Live just complaining. Hasn't been on in 5 weeks. He did a tag team with TJP. That was not bad. I think the dude's a hell of a talent. Been a fan since the Kingdom days with Matt Taven and Ring of Honor, and when he was in Impact Wrestling as the Miracle. So the sky's the limit for Mike and Maria, and he as well is friends with Cody and the Bucks. So, let's see what happens.
How about you, Miss?
Actually, on Mike Bennett, I've been reading some stuff on Twitter. There is one WWE source who, and I don't know if this is just to issue a smear campaign on him or not, but they accused him of faking an addiction problem because he according to them anyway, never went to rehab. And that they found it strange that he didn't go to rehab because they have family that has addiction problems and stuff. But I don't know how true that is. And I think a lot of Mike's problems had to do with the fact that, he went to the company and he wasn't in the best of shape. He wasn't in the best headspace, dealing with he really reaches out on Twitter. Like if somebody says they're struggling or they're having a tough night and they want to drink or they want to do drugs, he's on them, light on rice, saying I'll follow you, DM me, so I think that source is just a smear campaign. But he came to the company, and then shortly after he comes to the company with this addiction problem and with, being out of shape, he, Maria gets pregnant and then has to go on maternity leave. So, I just think his set of circumstances when he got signed weren't that great to begin with. And I think from the get-go, there really wasn't any hope for him, after the addiction stuff came out, after Maria got pregnant. I think that was really when the nail was put in their coffin in WWE anyways. And this is nothing personal against Mike and Maria, because I love Maria. I love Mike Kanellis, or Mike Bennett. I have loved him since, like Mike was saying, back to the Kingdom days with Taven. So, it's just a tough situation with him, and he is friends with the Bucks and Cody. So if, and Maria goes back with the Bullet Club, obviously, that famous gif of her dancing for Carl Anderson.
Yes.
So, I think on that front, that definitely is a maybe. Dolph Ziggler changing his name, I don't know exactly how much to read into that, because a lot of WWE talent over the past several months, I've noticed, have been changing their, the name that you type out that's not your @ or your handle. They'll change that to their real name and then have their WWE name as their handle or their @ on Twitter. So I have been noticing that. Sonya Deville goes by Daria Baronato on Twitter.
Yep.
So, I wouldn't read that much into it, but his contract is up in July, and, we don't know what's going on. He could be focusing on his stand-up comedy, because he does that on the side as well. We really don't know with him. He's a tough one to call. Now, the Revival, on the other hand, this has been something that has been in the works for years. If we go back to BTE, being the Elite, and we go back to the whole fuck the Revival angle, that was the start of this all. and it's culminating now. And the fact that those guys went and told Vince McMahon, we quit, in their trunks after a match tells you all you need to know. Those guys want the F out. They want out of WWE. They want out of Vince McMahon's. They want out from under Vince McMahon's thumb. They want to be able to go and do what they want to do. And AEW is the perfect spot for them. And, you know, like I was saying earlier, like they're giving Finn this push. Like I've heard this too. I've heard that WWE is offering to double salaries to keep people, or double contracts to keep people from jumping ship to AEW. I've heard that today. And it just goes to show you that Vince is threatened. Vince is feeling the heat, and it's showing because they're starting to produce some better television. They're starting to produce some better stuff, and I'm here for it because, like I've said before, anything that pisses Vince McMahon off and pisses him off for greatness brings me great joy because, you know, it's going to put his feet to the fire. It's going to make him want to do better and actually get off his old ass and book a show and do it right, and not have writers book a show 3 hours before it goes on air for a 3-hour show with I don't know how many segments in it. So all the better. If you want to come over to AEW, boys and girls, come over. But from what I've heard, Vince is going to pull a Neville on them and make them sit out their contracts until they're done. So it's kind of a thing of, do you take the hard road and maybe get more happiness, or do you take the easy road and just deal with the status quo as is and just take a little bit more money? It's like, what do you do? It's like the moral dilemma for a lot of these superstars. And you know, that's really my thoughts on it.
Yeah. As for, let me give throw my little 2 cents on this. As for Mike Bennett, this is a easy to see scenario. I don't think he's jumping ship to AEW. You know where I think he's gonna be showing up? He's gonna be showing up on NWA. He's friends with, what is the name, Dave Lagana and all those.
Dave Lagana and Billy Corgan.
Yeah, he's gonna jump ship to that crew. As for the Revival, you know, they could make a couple of big bucks on the indies, especially when you think about it on PWG. If they show up as the flippy wrestling tag team, they're gonna gather a massive amount of heat, and there could be, you know, rocking that house for a couple of months. And then obviously show up on most likely AEW to do the big program with the Young Bucks. Hell, even versus the Briscoe brothers, they could do a good run with them. Let's change the topic for a second. Let's talk about Impact Wrestling. And this week on Impact Wrestling, it was their first show on the new network, the Pursuit Network. They also are doing a simulcast on Twitch. There were around 12K people watching the show that Friday night. And the highlight of that show was obviously Scarlett Bordeaux doing a striptease, a lap dance on none other than Big Papa Pump, Scott Steiner. What are your thoughts on this, Larkin, and then Miss Cornette?
The big bag booty daddy, man. You brought him back. You had him lay out the Desi Hit Squad. Steiner throwing them suplexes. Scarlett doing her thing. You know what, Steiner, I mean, girl's a beautiful girl. Watched her since Ring of Honor. Now she's here in Impact Wrestling. Personally, I like her. I like her a lot, man. I thought the whole thing was entertaining, getting a little edgier with it. And I just look forward to seeing what we got coming with Scarlett Bordeaux. Who's she going to choose? You know what I'm saying? So it's going to be very interesting going forward. And as far as Scott Steiner, as far as him throwing belly to bellies, I could watch it all day because the dude can just throw a suplex. So it was a fun segment all in all.
How about you, Miss?
I dug it, and Impact knows Scott Steiner is their moneymaker too.
Yes.
Because that math promo is still legendary to this day.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, to have him come out there, you know, and kind of save Scarlett from the Desi Hit Squad creeps, you know, and then she gives him a striptease lap dance. I was just like, this is amazing. This is great television. This is gonna, I even said when it aired, I was like, this is gonna go freaking viral. I just freaking know it. And now, you know, you look at the YouTube hits and it's up to like 860 something K at this point. So, you know, she's doing her thing, and she's out there owning her body, owning her sexuality. She's owning being a woman, and it's inspiring, and I love it. And like Mike said, I have been watching Scarlett Bordeaux since she was in House of Truth with Truth Martini, Matt Taven, Jay Lethal. So it's like, she's been bringing sexy to wrestling since back then. So this shouldn't shock or surprise anybody. And I'm like, welcome to the Scarlett Bordeaux Club. Y'all are late joiners, but come on in. We got more room. So, I just loved it. And like, even my husband now, like, he's a very casual fan, and I showed him that segment, and he even saw it on Twitter, and he's like, I might have to start watching wrestling again. So I'm like, Scarlett got another one.
Yeah, she gets a lot of clicks on YouTube and all that stuff. To close this show, let's talk about the thing that you just bring in about Vince McMahon being able and be willing to do a bidding war with AEW. This is the big rumor. There's obviously many sides of this story, because the source of that rumor is none other than Dave Meltzer, who is friends with the John Bucks. But this is very, very, very telling if you think about that. So, final thoughts, Larkin, on this week. Yeah, on this week in wrestling. If I forgot something, you can go ahead and mention that in.
Oh, yeah, I will in 1 second. But I just got to say, man, you got to bring up Meltzer's name. You really got to do me like that, Robert? No. But in all seriousness, man, if you have to talk about this Vince McMahon, this bidding war at AEW, I mean, you have some viable competition. They got their show coming. They're bringing in Pac, they're bringing in Jericho, they're bringing all these names, man. And you get to see, I think Vince, I don't know if I can equate it to the Monday Night Wars because it's too soon, but you have more competition out there. And I think Vince McMahon is going to have to do what he does and just hopefully step his game up. I mean, you got Triple H there. It's not Triple H, it's Vinnie Mac. So, I mean, I'm just interested to see where it goes. Is really all I could say.
Miss, did I miss something in this week in wrestling that you might want to talk about before this show ends?
Not much. Just that, this is, wrestling fans need to understand that this is probably one of the greatest times to be alive as a wrestling fan. We have competition. We have more companies than ever. We have more content than ever. And now we have AEW being backed by a billionaire. And this is going to start. You think wrestling is cuckoo bananas now? Just wait until AEW gets into full swing. So, this is a stay tuned type situation where we're basically following a slow moving, breaking news story over weeks and months, and every day we're learning something new. There's a new development in the story, and it just gets getting crazier and crazier. And I'm just telling you guys, if you're a wrestling fan, this should be for you one of the greatest times to be alive, because you have all these indies wanting to work together to put on these shows like All In, and maybe Double or Nothing is going to have some associations. I know they went and surprised Bar Wrestling, the Elite did last night. So I think Bar Wrestling is going to be associated with it. I think they're going to pick some smaller indies that are more popular and associate with them and pick talent from there that aren't as well known. So, just enjoy this and enjoy the ride. And one thing too is the whole AEW versus Impact fans and the whole AEW versus WWE fans, that all needs to stop, because this is all wrestling. We all love it. And you're going to be able to consume the content, and you're going to be able to see your favorite wrestlers no matter what. So everybody needs to take a chill pill, and let's just enjoy this ride, because it's what a beautiful ride it is.
I got one more thing to add to that just really quickly. All right, because she said it beautifully, because it's pro wrestling. Let's just sit and just enjoy it. The only thing we missed with Impact that was really of news, because we talked about Twitch in the show, it looks like they're going back to the Rebel Entertainment Complex for either Redemption or Slammiversary, whatever the next pay-per-view is, which I'm assuming they're doing another Redemption in April. So it looks like they're going back to Canada for their pay-per-view.
Doesn't surprise me because of the Anthem connection that they're going back to Canada. My honest thing is, with Impact, they need to tour more cities. They need to hit up more than Las Vegas. They need to hit up more than Nashville. They need to hit up more than New York and Canada. They need to diversify and hit other markets, because you're going to dry out those markets. If you keep coming back, over and over again, people aren't going to want to come see you as much. So you need to diversify, go to more cities. Like I've always advocated, Houston is a good one. Even San Antonio would be good. Just diversify and go more places, because that's going to help you grow an audience more than just sticking to the same places at the same time all the time. Like that would be my only constructive criticism for Impact, is like, go to more cities, go to more places, just diversify and try to make yourself more marketable, because then maybe they'll be able to go on tour again, So that's my only thoughts. And my thoughts too with this whole Twitch deal and this whole Pursuit deal is we have not been able to even access Nielsen ratings for Impact's airing on Pursuit, because it didn't fall within the top 150 programs on television. So that tells you that it did not so well. And then only having 12K, this is something that Impact really needs to look at. And they really need to take a long look in the mirror and say, okay, we need to go back to the negotiating table. We need to find another channel that's more widely available than Pursuit. I know Anthem owns it. I know it was the easy way out, but sometimes you got to take the hard road. And this is one time where you're going to have to take the hard road to progress instead of regress. And that is not a beef with the talent. That is not a beef with Impact, the company itself. That is a beef with Anthem in the way that they are managing things. So nobody out there get it twisted. I am not hating on Impact. I am not hating on the talent. My favorite wrestler in the world is signed to Impact. I do not want to see anything bad happen to that company. It's just a thing of, you got to think smarter business-wise, Anthem.
To be honest, let me throw my 2 cents into.
Go ahead, Robert.
Yes. Okay. I'm think. To be fair, let me play. Hurls over here. Some devils advocate. I don't think Pursue have that system, because that when it comes down to Nielsen, you have to pay to get those numbers. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't actually even pay for those numbers, because they have to install boxes and blah 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 and track people. I'm not sure about that. However, it is what it is. They have their own deal. I'm not, I enjoy the show, but I think they change. They don't know who they are. It comes down to something as basic as your identity. Who are you and where you're gonna go? And that is something that have been a problem with Impact Wrestling for years. So I don't expect them to figure that whole thing out anytime soon. They're pretending to be someone else when they already had their own identity. The thing that I forgot about, and if I skip this one, Jorge might kill me to during my sleep.
Yes.
Ivelisse. Let's talk about Ivelisse. She wrote on Twitter that she, and this is a quote, she feels like she is being legally held hostage by Lucha Underground because she have requested her release multiple times to, obviously, Lucha Underground, and they have denied her release without, letting her go out of her contract and do something else with other companies. Holy cow! This is something bad for Lucha Underground. If you are not gonna be having another season anytime soon, and you have people that want to leave, let them leave. If it's even a smart business decision. Why? Because if you do that right thing at that moment in time, that person will say, hey, now Lucha Underground is on season 5. Let's see, I'm gonna be doing business with them when I wanted to get out, they gave me that privilege. Therefore, I'm gonna be, more willing to work with them once again. This is a mistake in my humble opinion. How are your thoughts on this, Larkin?
Man, if the girl just wants to go, let her go. I think you said it beautifully. Like, I could see so many scenarios with that girl because that girl is so talented. I mean, she was in the Tough Enough. She was, I enjoyed her on Lucha Underground. I think we kind of like fantasy booked, like when LAX was feuding with the OGs, to put Diamante and Ivelisse incorporated in that feud for, them to have respective women.
Yes.
I mean, Ivelisse would even do wonders in Women of Honor. There's so many talented girls there. NXT down the line. I mean, she's so good and talented at what she does, whether she's in Mexico or whatever she is. She's so good. I know Joey Ryan came out and was very supportive of what Ivelisse said. Excuse me. So I'm like, if the girl wants to go, let her go. I think season 5 was talked about happening next year, but we shall see. I mean, you got Wade Barrett coming in. We're going to see more of the White Rabbit, Killer Cross's character. So it's going to be, and what's his face, Jake Strong, Jack Swagger. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens if we get a season 5. What's going to happen in Lucha Underground? But if you want out, let her out. Don't hold her hostage.
Yeah. How about you, Miss?
My whole thing is like, why, do a compromise? Like, there's got to be some way. I don't know if there is, because my constitutional law and stuff is very rusty from college. But there has to be some way for them to maybe sign a waiver for her to be able to work in the meantime. And then whenever they have a date for production, then maybe she can't take dates maybe like 2 weeks or like a week before, something, if you want to keep her that bad, let her work elsewhere until you come back for season 5. There's got to be some middle road for this. There's got to be a happy medium between legally being held hostage and Lucha Underground and El Rey, not giving her away. Like, there's got to be some middle road for this. And I don't know if that's possible, and otherwise, if she just wants to leave, let her go and don't hold her hostage, because that's a PR nightmare for you. Because then if, say, there is going to be a season 6, if maybe Lucha Underground gets their crap together and stuff happens in a more orderly fashion, are you going to want to have talent want to come back if they're threatened with the thought of being legally held hostage and not being able to work dates and not being able to provide for their families and provide for themselves? It's like, come on, this is kind of like a common sense thing. And I know it's a business and I know that it's cutthroat and I know all that. But at the end of the day, do you want that PR nightmare, Lucha Underground? I don't think you do. So the wise decision is just to, if they say, if you love something, let it go. And if it comes back, it's yours. Let me just leave it with that.
So that is it for this episode. Thank you to everybody who listened to this show all the way through. Make sure to do the right thing and follow us on YouTube, on Twitter, on, iTunes, Stitcher, everywhere. So that is it for me and from the Wrestling Bodega podcast. I will see you next week. Goodbye and thanks for listening.